one? Number two.
Dorothy, and she's number 2.
Number 2, Dorothy.
Right, right.
There you
Number 2,
go.
we're both Dorothy. But we both love our mentor, Miss Wallace.
Yes, we do.
But I knew her before anyone else. I knew her in 1957. You would tell your year?
Not going to argue with her. I've known her since 1963, so that puts me not too far down the line.
But we love Miss Wallace.
Yes, we do.
Love her.
Yes, we do.
She's a wonderful person. She's like a mother to all of us. She's been an inspiration and just guides us and just takes care of all of us. She still calls her kids and her bunch, and anyhow, she's just a fun person to be with.
I'm Luann Howe. I went to school at Henderson from 75 to 79. In 1980, I was her grad assistant. And I remember the first time I met Miss Wallace, Emily, my roommate, who actually we played against each other in high school. We were opposing captains, came down to Arkadelphia to meet Miss Wallace. And we walked in the gym at Wells. It was during summer before we enrolled or before we started in the fall. And I could go down there right now and show you where Miss Wallace was standing. I remember walking in there, summer school classes were going on. And we walked up and we introduced ourselves and said, we want to come to Henderson and play volleyball. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but I know it was something like, well, that'll be mighty fine, and y'all just come on down. Classes will start in August, and when they start, we'll start practicing and we'll play. And at that point, I had no idea the impact on my life, the rest of my life, that the meeting Bettye Wallace would have, but it's just been incredible.
I graduated from Henderson in 1975. I played volleyball for Coach Wallace for 4 years, and also she was just a mentor to me during that time.
Vicki Lynette Cox. I go by VL Cox, and I'm a professional artist. I got my degree at Henderson in 1991 in the fine arts, but I played volleyball before that, and I was a wayward soul, and Coach Wallace kind of took me in and guided me and gave me a lot of direction and mentored me, and I'll just never forget the path that she took me off of and put me on. I benefit from it to this day, so I owe her a great deal.
I also went into coaching probably because of women like Coach Wallace, and I coached for 38 years and learned a lot just by being under her tutelage, and she was a big inspiration in my whole career.
I'm Sally Carter, and Bettye Wallace was my advisor and volleyball coach a long time ago, back in the 70s.
Well, I'm Dot Drummond, and I predate all of these Betty's Reddies except Miss Dorothy. I was here in the 60s, and Miss Bettye was my instructor in activities classes as well as in the classroom. So I've kept track of her for all those years since then, and she is the one person that I've always made it a point to visit with when I would come back to Arkansas, no matter where I lived. So she's just a really special person in my life, as to all of us, and she's just somebody we've counted on through the years. When we need an ear, when we need help, when we need anything, we call on Miss Wallace.
Well, I just want her to know personally that I tried my best to be a good example for these two. And Tony, it was hard, and I wasn't always able to rein them in. But through her example and mentoring, I think I did a pretty good job. They graduated.
We graduated.
Yeah, we graduated.
Yeah,
I take a lot of credit for that.
Many visits to Betty's
I take
office
most of the credit for that.
For reinforcement of the laws and
Really?
regulations of playing.
Exactly.
Going to class was important.
Right. And I used to think having, if Ms. Wallace asked you to come to her office for a chat, I thought, wow, she picked me to have a chat with. I learned very quick that was not a good thing. The chat was not good. You had usually done something, but she was superb.
A parent, if you didn't have one, she'd probably adopt you. But she's just a good coach, has been a good individual to me, inspiration, encouraging, especially after, you know, someone has gone through knee surgery after knee surgery, and still being able to be an athlete from the first one to the fourth one, and through every knee surgery, she's been there encouraging me to build, to, you know, just, you know, keep my body enabled to go on another year.
A grad student that was at Henderson that I later ran into years later, Benny Prince. She's the one that actually put part of the seed in my head to say, Ms. Wallace needs to be in the Sports Hall of Fame and we need to try to get her in there. And thus I pass it to my sister, Emily, because it was Emily and her group that took the ball to get everything rolling to try to get Ms. Wallace into the Sports Hall of Fame, at least get her nominated.
Okay. So she told me in 2011, so in 2012, we put a first nomination in, didn't get her on the ballot, then later that resumed, and now we have Ms. Wallace on the ballot. So, and then I was class of 79 at Henderson. I remember when we were first coming to Henderson being told that you really need to mind your P's and Q's around Miss Wallace. And one time my roommate and I were a little bit lax leaving class to get to practice on time, and we couldn't have been but a minute, 2 minutes late at the most, and Miss Wallace would join everybody in just hitting a little bit before official practice started. And when we came in the gym just a tiny, tiny bit late, she looked at us and said, "Ladies, practice starts at 2 o'clock, not a minute after." And from that day on, we were never late again.
When I was a freshman, I was sick a lot. She took care of me. I'm from Pennsylvania. I had measles. I couldn't very well go home, so she took me to her house and took care of me. And she's been mothering me ever since, and she's just been such an inspiration.
She used to tell us all the time that we came to school for an education, and that was first, and it was always first, and we came to play volleyball the second. And I've always wanted to tell her I came to play volleyball, and the education was the icing on the cake.
I've worked with incarcerated youth and gangs and things like that through my art field and stuff. And every now and then I'll get a little troublemaker, and I realize now that this is payback for what I did when I was young, because she had her hands full with some of us. But she had patience and tenacity and kindness and compassion, and I learned that from her, and I try to convey that on to other kids when I work with them.
She knew what our grades were, always checked up on that. If we needed any kind of tutoring, she would set that up. She was a hands-on advisor because she wanted to make sure that we not only were good in sports, and by the way, I was not, but she treated me just like I was the best athlete there was. She wanted to teach us so much more, and she wanted to make sure that we could be successful in life. That was just an important thing. Later, when I became president of National Park Community College, when I talked with my faculty and talked with my staff, I told them about Miss Wallace and the model that she had set up for us about how to take care of students. And that's one thing that I wanted them to do. I want you to be invested in your students as much as Miss Wallace was invested in us, because that's what kept us in school, what gave us a great foundation and a great start. I love Miss Wallace and always will.
She was a tough coach, but she was the kind of coach that you wanted her to be tough on you, and she made you work really hard, and it really paid off, because we had some successful winning seasons with Coach. And we three weren't roommates. For parts of the time we were at Henderson State under Miss Wallace. I played volleyball. Kim, tell them what you played.
Tennis.
I played volleyball, basketball, and tennis.
And tennis, yeah.
And tennis. And she wanted us to take all of her classes, which we did. And one of the ones we dreaded taking was soccer, because we knew we were going to have to run. And so we'd usually wait till the last minute to take the soccer class.
I had no idea soccer was so hard.
It was.
None.
We ran a lot in soccer. I remember that.
I think she just did it to punish us, actually.
Absolutely.
But
She did enjoy
we
that.
had to play soccer.
Running lines, running laps. She smiled particularly big when we were all having to do that.
Jump rope.
And jumping
Jump
rope,
rope, and-
absolutely.
And she taught us when we were playing volleyball, if we hit the net, we had to raise our hand and admit that we hit the net, even if it cost us to lose the game. And so there was a lot of integrity taught to us when she was our coach, because it was hard for us. She knew it and we knew it, and we just had to go ahead on and admit we hit the net and tell the official. She also made us learn the players' the officials' handbook, so we knew all of the rules so we could officiate if need to be ourselves. So we had to do that and go and officiate high school volleyball games, and it was just an amazing 4 years at Henderson State.
Coach Wallace was the only one that would accept playing two sports. I was interviewed to go to other colleges, but I couldn't give up volleyball and basketball. So Coach Wallace believed in me enough to say, hey, we're going to do this. So I played volleyball, I played basketball, and later I played tennis. But that's through someone that has encouraged you to do those things.
One thing about Coach Wallace is she always made us all feel like we were a part of something, no matter what. I mean, I wasn't like the best player or the starter. I rode that bench a lot, but she always found a special spot for everybody. And so she did find that special spot for me to serve. And I just retired from teaching, and I think she's my biggest influence over my life, teaching. And I just can't thank her enough for all that she's done for my life. During my years in college, I went through a period there where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do and kind of slipped away, and she was patient with me also and brought me back to the fold. And I just will never forget her. Ever.
I came from a little bitty place called Prattsville, Arkansas. And Arkadelphia was the biggest place I'd ever seen in my life. And when I came to school, man, I was like a fish out of water. I was scared to death. And Miss Wallace was wonderful. She took me under her wing, and she got me involved with this bunch of PE majors, and all of a sudden I found where I needed to be. So I will always, always be indebted to her because she taught us so much.
When we'd get together, we'd refer to her as Bettye.
I didn't.
She never
knew. Let it be known.
She never knew we did. And so we just started calling ourselves Bettye's Reddies. And,
we did that.
And for years we called ourselves that. And then finally, I'm not real sure when it was that we finally told her that that's what we called ourselves. And she was just elated and so flattered that that's what we referred to ourselves as, because we are truly Bettye's Reddies.
Now, Miss Wallace was, you talk about straight-laced, and man, she didn't hold with cussing, chewing, drinking, any of that stuff. So, of course, in our older years as a junior and senior, Sue and I were roommates. Well, occasionally, we would slip off on a Saturday night to Hot Springs. And we were close enough to 21 that we could kind of get in the Fiesta Club without any problem. But when we'd get up there, we'd go, and there'd be a whole carload of us. And yes, we had a designated driver, but we'd get up there and get in the Fiesta Club, and invariably we would run into somebody who was connected to Henderson. We would run into a student who was close to Miss Wallace. We'd run into a graduate assistant or a professor. And the first thing we'd do when we ran into somebody, we'd get scared to death and we'd all take off back to Arkadelphia, jump in the car and get down here because we just knew they were going to tell. And then for the next week or two, we walked on eggshells when we were around Miss Wallace because we were scared to death. She was going to find out what had happened. So, boy, we did. Now, I'll tell you this one thing too. No matter where we were on Saturday night or what we did, come Sunday morning, we got up, we put on our dresses, and when Miss Wallace pulled up in front of the dorm and it tooted that horn, we were out and in that car and we went to church. So I can just tell you that she had a great influence on all of us.
I went on to coach volleyball for
I did
high
too.
school, and I modeled my program after what I experienced with her. It meant that much to me, her influence on just what a team should be. And it's a family. You can see we're a family. You know, 30-something years later, we're still coming back and enjoying each other's company. So that's what she means. She just means whole heart.
That lets you see what kind of person she is to encourage you to continue to grow and be who you are, no matter what the consequences are. Through people, just be you, and you'll make it. And that's something I will believe from now on. And she's always encouraged, do your best, strive to be the best.
There was some occasion, I think it was a big anniversary or something, we were asked to write a letter.
Oh, yes.
And I thought about that letter very long before I actually, put a pen to paper with it, because I started thinking, what was it? What was it that was so phenomenal about that? Besides being in your early 20s, of course. But what was it? What was her example that was so profound, and that experience that was so profound? And the biggest thing I thought was, it gave us an opportunity through her example to practice being our best selves. I felt like that I was my best self, actually. And then you go through the years, and sometimes your best self, and sometimes you're not your best self, but you always know what your best self can look like.
Well, I need to tell you, all of you know some of everybody here, but we've got some folks that are a little bit different from some of you. And that's okay. That's okay. First of all, I want Dorothy Morris to stand up and let you see who she is. And I've been here since 1963. So that tells you a little bit about her, but that's okay. And Sally Carter over there is responsible for getting us back together. We didn't see each other for what, 60 years?
I left in 60 and came back in 85.
But I didn't see you until about 5 years ago, something like that. That's a long time. She still remembers me and has been so good to me through donations to the scholarship fund and to all this. And she's just kind of special to me because, you know, we have, many of you have a lot of high school or elementary school students that are very special to you. Well, she's very special to me. And I appreciate all that she has done, not only for me, but for Arkansas. She has given to so many funds and kept things alive that would have died out if it had not been for her willingness to give back. And
she's a big supporter of Henderson.
Yes, definitely. Of course, we kind of like that. So, Dorothy Morris, Now, when Sally kept telling me Dorothy Morris thought that she was in my class, that didn't mean a thing to me. Because her name was Dorothy Looper when she was in my class. And I finally told Sue, ask Sally what her maiden name was. Her married name didn't mean a thing. So when she said Dorothy Looper, light went on. Because I remembered her. And you know, I've had a few students through the years, so she must have been pretty good back then with it. And I appreciate Sally getting us together. Now, additional people, thank you, Dorothy. Additional people that we have here today who are honorary Reddies, Betty's Reddies. Most of you know Wanda O'Quinn. Put your hand up, Wanda, just a minute. And next to her, we have Carla Jones. Carla is the mother of Sean Jones, our new athletic director, who is doing a tremendous job. And she did an excellent job of raising him, I think. And she's a big supporter. We sit up there and holler at all the games, and she Wanda too. Then there's another one over here wandering around, Jane Lucas. Many of you know her. She is another one, and many of you have brought friends who are not, maybe not Henderson graduates and all, but you're honorary Betty's Reddies. We're glad to have you. Okay?
Okay. So a year ago, October 22nd, a journey began for all of us. And it actually started with Sally Carter saying, look guys, I'm retired now. I believe I can help us get Miss Wallace in the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame. And so that journey started. And we hope it ends with an induction in February or March. But what we've done, whether in or not, we realized that the history of women's athletics in college was not written down anywhere. And there was no record of who was involved, or very little record. So we started, many of us, and many of you wrote letters. And what we decided was that we would put it together in a book for Miss Wallace, so that she could have, these are nearly 40 letters written to just get her on the ballot, emails that we sent back and forth. There's a timeline in here that gives you kind of an idea of how this, when it went from a secret to Miss Wallace knowing in a very short period of time. But what I want to say is, when we started this journey, we had no idea the impact it would have on us. And how different we are today. Because of her influence that started the day, all of us met her, and will continue for the rest of our lives. So, Ms. Wallace, this is for you.
Oh.
Is it not true that you and Emily and maybe Sally went to somewhere and there is an archive of the early notes about the whistle?
We actually, what someone did, someone had the foresight when Miss Wallace and 3 or 4 others started getting together and started, well, originally with play dates, just like it started all over the country, to an organized group that got together and met, and the minutes of all those meetings and all of those things that someone turned into, it's the Arkansas Center for Culture and History, I think, and it's in the River Market. And Big M and I had a ball going through saying some of the things we learned were pretty funny.
Yeah. What? And so one kind of sticks out that I think everybody would appreciate with some humor today. Could you tell me, is it the part about Jane Severe that she was maybe the secretary and what one of her closing comments was?
In keeping with traditional Miss Wallace fashion, in the notes from one of the meetings for the weekends when they were together, Jane Severe was the secretary. And so in the notes, as part of the legitimate document of that meeting, it says, "Slave driver Wallace finally let us break for dinner."
appreciate so much the work that everybody has done, and whether or not I get into the Hall of Honor does not make a hill of beans difference to me. I've had all kinds of honors. This is great. I thought that when Pat Gordon and Margaret Downing and I died, which at our ages is not likely to be way on down the line, no one would ever know. But now you've got it written down where whoever wants to can see it. And that's what counts. Thank you so much.
I think I'm the oldest person here. And so I'm number 1, Dorothy, and Dot's number 2. She's so young, I couldn't believe the difference in our age. But anyway, this woman is my inspiration for life. When I met her in 1957, I was just a little skinny, homely little girl with big ears. I remember, I finally grew into my ears. But she made me feel that I was special.
You were.
She made me head of the class, we didn't have a team, we didn't have the Title IX money. So we had our own, she did her own thing, and she would take me on these trips and let me play basketball. And I thought I was really something. And so I've lived my life. She inspired me all of my life. So I became a philanthropist through my life. And now then, I'm giving her what she gave to me, a scholarship fund for her scholarship at Henderson University, $1,000.
Help another kid go to Henderson. You can't beat that.
I started playing in '69, and when I started, we didn't have uniforms like this. We had a T-shirt from the bookstore, and we wore pennies that had a number on them. We had shorts. I had a pair of cut-off shorts, and they gave us knee pads, and that's all we got. And then the next year, we got some warm-ups, and I got in trouble with my warm-ups. We were at a tournament in Conway, and we weren't supposed to leave the room with our warm-ups on, and I was a freshman. And so they wanted some pie when we went back to the room, so they sent me over to the restaurant to get the pie, and I'm walking back across the parking lot with the pie in my hand, and guess who drives in? Coach. And she said, "I need to see you in my room." And so I'm like, okay. So I go back and tell the upperclassmen, and they're all laughing. They thought it was real funny. I go to her room, and she said, "If you want to continue to travel with the team, you'll follow the rules or you won't travel."
Wow.
So I did whatever she said to do. I'd do it.
We all had that conversation. That's me right there. I'm not in that one. That's Kim. That's me, and where you at? And there's Diane Gooch right there. Yep.